This is the Signal 51 Chronicles. Murder at the Public Schools Gymnasium. I'm John Henry. On the other side of this technology thing is Jake White, retired sergeant of the Fort Worth Police Department. We come to you today from actually 2 undisclosed locations. 3 if you count our producer Ashley. She's out there somewhere. We don't know where, but she swears she's there. Anyway, Jake, what's the word?
Well, I'm disappointed in your background, I will say. I was hoping that you would have awoken out of some drunken slumber in your bed, like laptop up here.
No. I said I haven't done anything.
I know you. Yeah, I know you've been on your better behavior after I diagnosed you with postnasal drip sore throat.
Well, I think I had the cicada COVID variant, to be honest with you, but
no, you did not.
I'm diagnosing myself. So today we're going to go back 50 years, but 55 years actually. But we're pinning this episode around an event of a couple of weeks ago, and that event was the death of Dave McGinnis, longtime NFL assistant, former head coach of the Cardinals, Arizona Cardinals, who died April 13th at age 74 after an illness the Tennessee Titans announced that day. McGinnis served as the Cardinals head coach from 2000 to 2003. After a stint as defensive coordinator, I believe. We know him because he went to TCU. Grew up in the West Texas town of Snyder, came to TCU to play football, and he was part of an unfortunate circumstance, a part of a series of unfortunate circumstances. On January 14th, 1970, when he was a student here at TCU. And at approximately 2200 hours, Jake, I think that's 10 o'clock.
10 p.m.
Fort Worth police officers responded to a call at 1400 Foch Street. Did I get that right?
Good pronunciation. Very good.
And 1400 Foch Street in Fort Worth, Texas is the renowned and now iconic Public Schools Gymnasium, which we call today Billingsley Fieldhouse. And the call was a Signal 51 investigation. For more than 70 years, I think it's been about 70, I think 1953 that thing was built. This location is where Fort Worth public schools, high schools play basketball games, probably volleyball too now. And it sits at the corner of Lancaster and University Drive, right behind the historic Farrington Field, which, God willing, school officials will save. Been up for sale, they say. Parts of it anyway. But when police arrived, they found the 6'2", 220-pound body of Barry Leatherman near the west exit of the gym. He was still breathing while onlookers tried to treat his wounds. An ambulance was summoned, and he was transported to the now defunct St. Joseph's Hospital on South Main Street. Probably about 20 minutes away. Barry Leatherman was a Fort Worth native. He was a standout linebacker, an all-district performer in 1967 and 68 at Carter Riverside High School, where he graduated in 1969. His ability to play football grabbed the attention of college coaches, including TCU, his hometown university, where he received and accepted a scholarship to play for Coach Fred Taylor.
He was very good. He was a strong guy. He was a big guy. But his work ethic was amazing. He would be out there doing everything he could to improve himself. In my opinion, me being a junior back in 1970, he was like the athlete,
Mm-hmm.
So I would say an amazing football player.
Mm-hmm.
Very good, very strong. Like I say, wasn't small. I think he's about 6'3", maybe.
I believe that's what I read. Yeah, I believe that's what I read.
240 maybe.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, if I remember. Just going back in memory. But gosh, he's very strong and aggressive on the football field, but the exact opposite as a person.
Leatherman was an expected varsity starter for the 1971 Horned Frogs football team under new coach Jim Pittman. Do you know anything about Jim Pittman, Jake?
I do not. I'm sure I'm up for a history lesson real quick.
He is renowned for essentially dropping dead on the football field. In Waco against Baylor in 1974, I think, or 2 or something like that.
Never heard of this.
No?
No. This is the first I'm hearing of this.
It was in pregame warm-ups, and he just dropped. Had a heart attack and died.
Really?
I think it was 1974. I think 74.
I haven't heard about that. That's interesting.
Well, anyway, his first year there was 1971. Fort Worth was, in those days, in the midst of integrating its high schools. In 1958, our man Clifford Davis, the famous Clifford Davis, filed suit to force Fort Worth to begin integrating, a suit that was won in 1962, and that was the year the school district began integrating, starting with the elementary grades. By the late 1960s, under the direction of a judge's order to quicken the process of desegregation, Fort Worth high schools had begun to integrate. Some believe that there was a racial component to what happened that night of January 14th, 1970. Others are quite certain there was a racial component to what happened that night. But it wasn't until the fall of 1967 that black students could attend any public school and any public high school in Fort Worth. A Star-Telegram headline blared 13 years after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled segregated schools illegal in Brown versus the Board of Education. Fort Worth schools achieved full integration. 5 high schools that year: Heights, Carter Riverside, Northside, Pascal, and Polytechnic enrolled black students as the last step of an intentionally slow desegregation plan. Our man Glenn Lewis, he's an attorney here and former state rep who is today the chairman of the board of Texas Wesleyan University, was quoted as saying, "We'd never had white teachers before." He was then an 8th grader at Dunbar Junior High School, at that time still an entirely black school serving the Stop 6 neighborhood. He named off friends who chose to transfer to Polytechnic or to what is now Trimble Tech, which was integrated in 1964. He continued, "We were kids, we didn't give it a whole lot of thought back then." The fall of 1967 was also the first year Fort Worth high school football teams played together in the same league. white and black schools have been separated in segregated Texas sports leagues, the UIL, the all-white UIL, and the PVIL, Prairie View Interscholastic League. Lewis continued, we were all trying to blend in and trying to figure how to make things work. In the black community, the feeling was, okay, now you're getting to show the white community what you're like. Some white people had never seen a black person up close before. The Riverside neighborhood, the neighborhood that Barry Leatherman grew up in, did not have a good reputation as one of tolerance. If you ask longtime Fort Worth people, they'll likely tell you that it was rednecky and racist. One notable incident in the 1950s provides the tenor. Lloyd Austin, a Baptist preacher, moved his family into the white part of Riverside. At the time, white residents lived north of East First Street, while black residents lived to the south. Austin, his wife, and one-year-old daughter moved on September 1st, 1956, the first black family to own a home on the previously all-white neighborhood block. Austin wrote in an autobiography, I wasn't out trying to be a trailblazer, and I certainly was not part of some plot by the NAACP. And no, I most definitely was not trying to be the Martin Luther King of Fort Worth. We had bought a house that we liked, could afford, and just wanted to move into it, be left alone. The day the Austin family moved in, there were only hints of what was to happen, he told the Star-Telegram. One woman, whom Austin described as an alcoholic, stood in front of the newly purchased house, shouting that the white people in the neighborhood should do something about this attempted integration. The next morning, a newspaper reporter knocked on the door and asked Austin if he knew that his neighbors were planning to burn his house down. Things got worse after that, he told the Star-Telegram. The whole area was just packed with white folks, and as the hours passed, more of them came, he said. They called me a bunch of ugly names and had signs painted. They hung a dummy from a tree limb in my front yard with a knife in his chest and a red stain that ran down from the knife. Austin called the police, who ignored him. The crowd threw rocks at the house, breaking 2 front windows, according to newspaper reports. They created an effigy of Austin and hung it in a maple tree outside the house, according to his autobiography. Austin got a .22 caliber rifle and shot out the window, hitting a parked car. That is what prompted police to show up and disperse the crowd. The environment inside the Public Schools Gymnasium that January evening was, to put it nicely, cheeky. Martin Flores, the starting guard on that Carter Riverside team, recalls the atmosphere.
Como has always traditionally have been a powerhouse because of and they were very good in basketball. And for whatever reason, we put together a pretty good team, and we played them for the district championship in that game, and ended up beating them actually. But It was pretty, I would say, a pretty wild environment in terms of, they weren't used to getting beat, so there was a little, hostile, kind of attitude towards us. But it's probably going both ways too, a little bit. But it was a very, very, I would say, kind of a wild scene,
Yeah.
all around.
Did it get nasty in there at all?
I think there was some. A lot of verbal back and forth in the stands. I didn't see anything that led us to believe that there was an altercation in the stands, but it was a very hostile environment. The game was extremely competitive, and it was a close game, and we ended up pulling away at the end, and it was just a very hostile environment. And once it was over, we were immediately shoot into the locker room because of all the craziness. And it was, it was pretty hostile, I think.
Did you see or hear of anything about maybe something racial was going on in there during the game?
Well, I didn't see or hear. And back in 1970, I don't know that race was that big of. I don't know that race was kind of the cornerstone for everything like it is today. But it was obviously it was a African American school against a more of a Caucasian school, and so there was that hostility. If someone wants to call it race, I guess they can. But to me, back then, it was just two different segments of classes of people that were playing in a basketball game, and that's all I saw.
In attendance with Leatherman that night, watching Carter Riverside play Como, was his friend, his roommate, and fellow TCU football player, Dave McGinnis. After Carter Riverside's 65-43 victory, the crowd of almost 300 people descended upon the parking lot. As Leatherman and McGinnis were walking to their car, a fight broke out. McGinnis saw several people attacking Leatherman for reasons he said he did not know. McGinnis went to the aid of his friend, but was stopped when one of the assailants threw a rock and struck him in the chin. McGinnis later believed it was a piece of rebar. Carter Riverside's high school principal told detectives, quote, "We did everything we could. It couldn't have been 10 seconds by my watch until we were breaking up the fight. And once it was broken up, 3 assailants fled, and Leatherman was critically injured. At 10:35 p.m., Leatherman was pronounced deceased, dead from a single gunshot wound to the chest. A Tarrant County medical examiner investigator named T.R. Harris told reporters that Leatherman was shot at a close range in the chest. Said Harris, the blast knocked the lining off the inside of his Mackinaw coat.
Actually, we didn't hear. I didn't. We got escorted to the bus real quickly and got out of there, and I didn't hear about that until later that evening. Someone had called me. Barry lived like a block from me. He lived around the corner. Actually, a couple of times we walked to school together because I'd actually see him walking by his house. So I didn't hear anything till the following morning, that evening. And clearly it was a shock because Barry was probably, and then in honest truth, probably the first gentleman I've ever met. I mean, a gentleman. He was a class act, and just never heard anybody say anything bad about him. He was a class act.
Not a guy going around to say a bully or pick on people or anything like that. Yeah.
No, I would never would I. Never. I mean, no.
Okay.
He actually would mentor me about lots of things about how to conduct myself in sports and just good person. So no, I would think Barry was that kind of person at all.
Barry Leatherman's stepfather, Clarence Cagle, said in later reports that his stepson had been threatened the year prior at a Riverside High School, Como High School basketball game. During the incident, 1 year prior to his death, Leatherman was leaving the gym with several friends when they were taunted by 4 guys in another car. The driver of the car pulled a gun from the glove box, but the other 3 passengers pulled him back. Leatherman told his stepfather the occupants in the other car were excited about or incited by a play in the basketball game. Dave McGinnis, speaking to detectives in that January 1970 night, told detectives that he and Leatherman had just returned to TCU after the winter break. Trying to break the monotony before spring semester classes started, he went to the game with Leatherman. McGinnis said, quote, "We were never that wrapped up in the game. I don't even know what the team's names were." McGinnis and Leatherman left the public school gymnasium, McGinnis walking in front of Leatherman. McGinnis turned and saw Leatherman, quote, looking at three youths. McGinnis stated, "They got to Barry before I started. When you see a friend in trouble, you go to help him." Lon Goldstein, who is the assistant director of athletics for Fort Worth Public Schools, stated he, along with several other school officials, broke up the fight when they saw McGinnis struggling with someone. The next day, Como High School was abuzz about the shooting. Wilmer Bird, the principal for Como High School, called a meeting with the student council. It was during this meeting a name emerged. Lewis Ivory's name came to the surface, and it was only Lewis Ivory's name. One source told us that during the game, Ivory had made some inappropriate comments to some female students from Carter Riverside. Leatherman stepped presumably and told Ivory to knock it off. The confrontation continued, and when they went to the parking lot after the game, a fight ensued, and Ivory shot Leatherman, according to one witness. After the meeting, school officials and detectives transported Lewis Ivory to City Hall, where he was interviewed by detectives L.V. LaFills and V.T. Summers. Initially, Ivory told detectives he left the gym after the game and was walking to a friend's car. The friend was William Sylvester Clark. Ivory, who said he was not part of the fight, continued walking when two guys grabbed him, thinking he was part of the brawl. Ivory told detectives he began, quote, scuffling and fumbling around when two of his friends pulled one of the attackers away from Ivory. Ivory tried to make a break for it and get to Clark's car, but before he could reach the car, Ivory saw two more men approaching. Ivory said he pulled a pistol he had concealed on his person and fired twice. Unsure if he hit anyone, Ivory said he fled. Ivory also told detectives he did not know Barry Leatherman, and he was carrying the pistol because he was having problems with another person from the Como neighborhood. Fort Worth ISD, or Fort Worth Public Schools superintendent back then, Julius Trulson, praised school officials for identifying Ivory.
So the next day, on January 15th, 1970, Lewis Ivory was charged in the murder of Barry Leatherman. As police were looking into Ivory, they were also investigating William Sylvester Clark's role in the murder. Clark had a connection, as it was his car that Ivory said he was trying to get to on the night of the murder. Almost 2 weeks after the fatal shooting of Barry Leatherman, a Tarrant County grand jury returned indictments for Ivory and Clark. However, the indictments were returned with a surprise. Ivory's murder charge was reduced to a misdemeanor for carrying a pistol. It was Clark who was charged with the murder. So what had happened? Ivory's story changed is what happened. Ivory recanted his confession and told detectives that it was Clark who fired the fatal shot. Ivory told detectives that he loaned the gun to Clark just before the game. To back his statement, Ivory took and passed a polygraph test. Ivory's father, Lewis Ivory Sr., told detectives, quote, the other youth threatened Ivory Jr., along with his mother and sister. Ivory remained in jail because his father could not afford to pay attorney fees. Ivory was eventually released from jail after posting $1,000 on bond. Still on the lam, though, was William Sylvester Clark. After Ivory was released from custody, he had hoped to resume classes at Como High School. After all, students facing misdemeanor charges were typically allowed back to school and placed on probation through the school district. An assistant superintendent of secondary education would decide if Ivory was allowed back to school. Even though Ivory only had pending misdemeanor charges, the school district did not admit him back until they could make a complete review of the case. Still on the run, some 2 weeks after being indicted, was Clark, though that would soon change. On February 2nd, 1970, Fort Worth police received a tip that at 4:30, Clark was seen in a car near the Ridgely Theater on Camp Bowie. A short time later, and a short distance away, Fort Worth police officers R.K. Wilkinson and J.J. Lee encountered Clark in the 5700 block of Blackmore Avenue. Why is J.J. Lee noteworthy, Jake White? Because prior to 1975, Fort Worth PD did not allow black officers to patrol white neighborhoods. Therefore, J.J. Lee, a black officer, was patrolling his beat in the historically black neighborhood known as Como. As an aside to our story, J.J. Lee was also no ordinary cop. In 1976, then Officer Lee and Officer Peter Mitchell, both black officers, took the detective exam to promote from patrol officer to detective. They both passed. However, in a strange and suspicious turn, the city council reorganized the department and eliminated 2 detective positions to make room for 4 new clerical positions. That suspicious reorganization effort did not go unnoticed by Chief A.J. Brown. By July 1976, Chief Brown went back to the council and demanded 2 new detective positions. Chief Brown stated that the city's Human Relations Commission cited the fact Lee and Mitchell were inadvertently discriminated against. The effort by Chief Brown paid off. Lee was first promoted and the first black detective in the Fort Worth PD. Mitchell was promoted a short time later. Now, an aside to this aside, Chief Brown, described as a reformist and outsider, was said to be widely unpopular among the rank and file, probably because, well, he was a reformist and outsider. You know all about that, do you not, Jake White, about the reformers and the outsiders?
So the reformer and outsider, I think anytime a new chief comes to a city, big or small, from the outside, they're not promoted from within.
Mm-hmm.
They're often called reformers. It seems to have a negative connotation, right? Because, frankly, most people don't like change. So it's funny, almost exactly 50 years later, the same complaints still prevail. But, sometimes that reformer mentality is not a bad thing, though, right? I mean, you look near 30 miles to the east, Dallas PD as an example, they seem to be going through a lot of struggles in the late, the 2010 to 2019, 2020 era, when now Fort Worth PD chief had moved to Dallas from California or wherever he's from and turned that place around, right? Really improved morale, made some changes that seem to be lasting. So, like I said, I think it's ironic that the same complaints still exist, 50 years later. I mean, as far as it being a bad thing.
Yeah, or maybe it's not such a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
So the more things change, the more they stay the same,
Yeah, exactly.
as they say.
As they say.
Well, anyway, this Chief Brown, he winds up resigning in 1979 to become city manager of Hearst. I don't know if that's a promotion or not. Nothing against Hearst.
It was sizably smaller.
Especially in those days.
Yeah.
So just how much did Chief Brown's men and women on the force dislike him? According to a blurb in D Magazine, shortly before Brown announced his resignation, he arrived at work one morning to find a large pile of chicken manure on the carpet in front of his office door, put there by some of his men as a comment on his administration. Can you imagine such a thing, Jake White?
What'd you say?
Could you imagine such a thing?
No, I mean, some of those, it'd be impossible to do that now, or unlikely, but the sediment still remains oftentimes for those administrators, the rank and file, and frankly, do they lose touch? Yes, most of them do. So that frustrates the rank and file, and shenanigans can and do happen still.
Well, said one of these cops, we've decided to have a big party for the chief, but we've decided to have it after he's gone. Now, of course, this could have been much worse, this chicken manure episode. You remember the Office episode where Michael Scott finds the unpleasant surprise on his office floor?
Yes.
He called it terrorism against the office.
Yes. Maybe A.J. Brown was like Michael Scott. Who knows?
He might have been. I don't know. Okay. Well, back to our case. When Clark was confronted by police right around the Ridgely Theater down here, he provided a false name in hopes of throwing Blue off of his trail. The officers, though, were not so simple. They knew better, and he eventually came clean and was taken into custody without incident. Do something a little bit different on our blotter today. Let's do sports crimes.
All right, let's do it. Two of my favorite things merging.
I got a text message this morning from our friend Paul Jokas.
Oh, okay.
Canadian who played junior hockey.
Yeah.
And he says, "This is hilarious." I said, "What's that?" It's the NHL record for most penalty minutes in a game. Would you care to take a guess at this? Most penalty minutes by one guy in a game.
My hockey knowledge is at a bare minimum. So I would have
2 minutes for high sticking, 5 minutes for fighting, stuff like that. Tripping.
I don't know. I mean, to me, 10 minutes would seem like a lot. But again, I'm speaking from zero knowledge of the sport up north. And I guess down here now and everywhere.
Well, the Canadians haven't won a Stanley Cup in
No.
1993, I think. It's the last time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's a long drought.
Yeah.
Longer
now,
than
of course, all the
Cowboys
American
drought.
teams are all the teams are made up predominantly of Canadians.
Yeah.
But a Canadian team
Yeah.
hasn't won in 33 years.
News to me there too. But they have I don't even know a lot of the, they have the Las Vegas Golden Knights and all these, I would have zero clue if I saw their jersey or sweater, whatever you call the hockey jersey.
Yeah. Sweater, yeah.
I would have no clue who they were.
Well, this guy played for the Los Angeles Kings.
Okay.
The NHL record for most penalty minutes in a game is 67.
Okay.
Assessed to Randy Holt,
Okay.
Canadian, while playing for the Kings in a game against the Philadelphia Flyers on March 11th, 1979.
Okay.
Holt received a 2-minute minor penalty, followed by a 20-minute fighting penalty, followed by a 45-minute fighting penalty for inciting a brawl.
Okay. Seems excessive.
67 minutes.
That's the kids do now.
So my question is that 67 minutes of power play? It is not. It is not.
Right.
Those only go 2 or 5 minutes at a time. So what that meant is he had to sit out. He got a 10-minute, I guess they call it major, and he has to sit out for 10 minutes. If there's a minor penalty, like a high sticking or something, while that's happening, then someone else has to sit out 2 minutes for him. But he's out for 10 minutes during the full 10-minute period.
Okay.
So now you know the rest of the story.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say about that.
Where's the crime?
Well, that is crime. Penalties.
Oh, God. Of course you tied it into that. Of
It's
course.
it's NHL crime.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, okay, I'm with you now. And I can see him texting you that at about 9:30 this morning.
Yeah, I think it was, in fact.
I can actually hear him saying that to you in that deep Canadian accented voice. Back to me.
He called me up later. He called me up later and explained how the penalty situation works.
I think he was one to spend some time in the penalty box as well.
Oh, yeah.
In his younger days.
Oh yeah, he was a protector. Is what they call him, a defender, protector. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's call this a day. Join us next week for the conclusion of the murder at the Public Schools Gymnasium.
This is a Stolen Water Media production.